what is going on in many of our churches through this COVID period, through the space of disruption, is that people are beginning to ask the question, who are we? And what are we to be about? And what does it mean to be church in the midst of all of this? There's a lot of confusion going on here. Now, what happens in Luke 10, which is really about this question of identity in Galilee of the Gentiles, is that Jesus sends the 70 or 72 out, and they are to go into these towns and villages, and they carry with them a word. And the word that they bring to the people of these towns is shalom, peace, a deep and profound Old Testament word rooted particularly in Isaiah. Because you see, the people of Galilee of the Gentiles are filled with anxiety. And their anxiety is what's happened. The story that we've lived in, the story of being at the center of God's life and God's hope seems to have been shattered. Wherever we look, Rome is present. And the story of being God's people seems to have been torn up. We're confused. Where are we? And so when these 72 go and speak the word of shalom in these towns and villages, that was revolutionary language to people who had lost the sense of who they were. Because you see, the primary narrative of those places was Rome's pax, or peace. And what Jesus is saying through the 72 is that Rome's pax wasn't the real story of what's going on. The real story of what's going on is shalom, which is shorthand for God's kingdom is right here amongst you in these places where you live. Now that is about identity. What is happening here is that Jesus, through the 70, is reminding these people about the core nature of who they are. They are people shaped by God's kingdom, by God's presence. And what does that mean? What that means is these 72 were not focused on fixing and managing the situation in Galilee of the Gentiles. They didn't go in there with new plans and new strategies and new outcomes for, quote, coming out of COVID, or for finding the formula for a new future. That was not the work that they were doing. The work that they were doing was work of identity, of reinviting these people in Galilee of the Gentiles to see and embrace their very identity as those who are rooted in what God is doing and what God is about, because that was what been lost. And I think in our time, identity can no longer be about denominational brand or fixing associational churches or new kinds of churches. It cannot be about our socio-political positions that we align with. Our identity needs to come from our conviction that we are the people of God. We are shaped by God's presence, and we are the bearers of God's presence here. And that's precisely what's been lost. And the role of leadership in that isn't primarily managing and fixing. The role of leadership here is about how we go about forming a people who incarnates and bring the shalom of God. Because that's where a renewed hope and confidence is going to be discovered. It is in the fact that God is at work in the very places where we dwell.